Hello and welcome to this FUTEK webinar. My name is Rich and I'm a Senior Manager with IHS, and I'd like to review a few housekeeping items with you before we begin. Let's just take a moment to familiarize ourselves with the operation of the user interface for today's webinar. Now, the large window with the heading FUTEK Presentation in the upper left, that's the primary window for today's webinar. Just to the right of that main presentation window, you'll see the speaker's bio window with background information on today's presenter, John Schnell. Now, just below that, there's a Q&A window, and at any time during the presentation, you can enter a question into the box in the lower section of the window and click Submit. Your question will then be placed in the queue for the speakers to address when we get to that Q&A session. Now, if you look to the bottom of your screen, you'll see additional buttons to enhance your webinar experience. To see what a particular button does, just place your mouse pointer over it and a tooltip will appear with a description of that button's function. And now to get this webinar started, here's FUTEK's Senior Application Engineer, John Schnell. John?
Good day, this is John Schnell. I'm an Applications Engineer with FUTEK Advanced Sensor Technology, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar. Today's topic is medical automation using miniature load cells and USB solutions. Today's agenda will cover our certifications and core competencies, two families of miniature load cells, our USB solutions. We have a guest presenter, senior software developer Brandon King, will speak on several software and developer considerations. And then I'll go into some of the conceptual medical applications showing how miniature load cells and our USB solutions work together on different platforms. We'll follow up with a question and answer session, hopefully addressing anything associated with the medical application or specifically medical device applications. Before we begin today, I would like to give you an overview of FUTEK. FUTEK was founded in 1988. We are a privately held company. The product line includes load cells, reaction torque sensors, rotary torque sensors, pressure transducers, instrumentation, multi-component sensors, and software. All right, before we get started, I want to take a few minutes and just talk about our certifications. FUTEK is ISO 9001, 17025, Z540, and 13485. I believe this is an important issue from the standpoint of the standards that we work to, and also for you, the user, to understand that you're working with an organization that insists on the highest standards and offers extremely high quality. The other thing that I wanted to point out was our RoHS program. We have RoHS capable or compliant products, and we have an objective in 2014 to expand our RoHS capability. We also utilize IPC WHMA-A 620 for cable and wire harness assembly. For those who are unfamiliar with this, this is a methods guideline for ensuring high quality requirements for our cable and connector interface. As I just mentioned, our facility is geared towards the production of medical load cells involving RoHS compliance and CE approval. Our history goes back to 1989, where involvement with companies such as IMED and IVAC allowed us to become involved with the medical device marketplace. Realizing the need for high quality, high demanding solutions, we decided to make the medical device market part of our core competency. As a result, we've made tremendous investments in our facility. We've achieved our ISO 13485 compliance, and current clients include Thermo BCT, Covidien, and General Electric, just to name a few. Most of FUTEK's products can be geared towards the medical device applications with the right credentials. Now, we do have a significant variation, and we stock most of these products. Today we're going to highlight two particular load cells, our LSB 200 miniature S-beam load cell and our miniature and sub-miniature button style load cells. Both of these products are supported by our stocking program, and again with the proper credentials built under the guidelines of the medical device criteria can be utilized for those applications. The LSB 200 is the workhorse of our miniature product line. I'm focused on this particular design today for a number of reasons. Performance, 0.1%, nonlinearity, small package size with tight centerline capability. The base design allows for tight centerline locations in applications such as keyboard testing, steering wheel switch testing, where positioning of multiple sensors becomes critical. The mechanical overload stop is also extremely important in automation applications where we have a potential for mechanical overload. This particular design is available in ranges starting down at 10 grams, where in these working ranges the overload stop becomes even more important. Just to explain the mechanism itself, if you look at the current slide, you'll see a female thread on the top of the load cell. We have a matching thread on the bottom, which you cannot see in this image. You attach to those female threads, applying a tension or compression load accordingly to provide stimulation to the load cell. You'll see this particular slide is dimensioned, and I do want to point out the 0.26 inch or 6.7 millimeter thickness. That's the side-to-side centerline dimension that I was referring to earlier. In this package size, as you see, relatively small, and the package size is consistent from the 10-gram range up to the 100-pound range. This next slide gives a better example of the physical loading characteristics for LSB 200. But just to kind of recap, again, capacity is down to 10 grams. That is significant. All the more reason that the mechanical stops play an important role in the durability of this particular item. The LSB 200 is ideal or optimal for actuator work. It directly supports structures and objects within limits. We've designed it with a high flex cable with a spring strain relief because in most of our automation applications we're under constant movement. We're also introducing minimal mass to the system. This load cell is a very light product, and therefore the additional mass of the load cell to the system is significantly low, thus reducing the unwanted moment in the application. The next load cell I'd like to talk about is the FUTEK LLB family button style load cell. These load cells are compression only, as you can see from the red button. Your force is being applied in a compression mode. There's two key aspects to this design that are desirable for the medical device application. One is the physical size. We offer very small configurations with our LLB 130 being the smallest, and also response time. Being diaphragm design and relatively small size, we can provide very fast response capability with this load cell. A subtle but significant differentiator here with this design and many of our others is that for compression application, we are using multiple strain gauges in these designs. That, with the spherical load surface, allows for a much more resistant design for extraneous forces. So with the additional strain gauges and the spherical load surface, if I have a situation where my load surface is not perfectly flat and parallel, my load cell has the capability to correct for that phenomena. The next slide just addresses the considerations that we apply to the medical device applications. Of course, RoHS, everybody understands that. For us, that is a lead-free environment, and we will have a completely lead-free environment by the end of 2014, with the exception of a couple workstations that allow us to support the aerospace industry. CE approval, almost everything we're doing we have CE approval on our products. This next one is, I think, very important for specific medical applications, non-magnetic material. We get into environments where our load cells might be utilized in MRI systems where an interruption of the magnetic field is not suitable for the system, and also a varying magnetic field is something that we wish to avoid for our sensors. But more importantly, we need to be invisible to the imaging process, and we can offer a non-magnetic construction for those applications. The miniature aspect, we're finding that the demand for miniaturization is a continuous process, more emphasis every year on smaller and smaller, and we are accommodating that, as I mentioned in the earlier slide. Also, the improvements in performance. The marketplace continuously requires improvement for accuracy and repeatability. The base load cell designs are constantly being improved to provide this, and then when you couple this with our USB solutions, it allows us to electronically enhance the overall performance, providing the client with incredible performance specifications. And the last item, probably one of the most important, stringent quality checks. Anytime you're taking these products and moving them out of the realm of what we would call our industrial marketplace into medical device applications, we get into very, very stringent quality checks and quality systems. This is the entire essence of our ISO standards, and we have tremendous supervision on the part of our engineering team and our quality team, working hand in hand with our production team at every step, multiple checks and quality assurance that we provide a product that is sent to the field with zero defects and to provide zero field failures for this critical marketplace. The last thing I'd like to review is our USB platform. This technology was developed specifically for automation applications, offering very tight nonlinearity, extreme resolution, and is very responsive with capabilities to make measurements down into the millisecond range. In looking at the typical platform or the traditional platform, I'm dealing with a setup usually involving a load cell, analog amplifier, and then I'm going to take my signal and I've got to go into my data acquisition solution. I might also have a separate power supply that I need for my load cell, and in many cases I'm dealing with multiple suppliers for these components, a supplier for the power supply, a supplier for the load cell, and potentially a supplier for the analog amplifier. FUTEK's objective in utilizing USB as our platform was, one, to provide a more standardized approach to the marketplace, minimize the number of components to get us from that analog force measurement, in this case, to the digital world via USB. And this next slide shows a typical approach where we have the load cell and our USB device, obviously a much cleaner solution, fewer components, and a single supplier adaptation. And just to go over some of the key points for our USB solution, offers very high resolution, amazing accuracy, and very high speed. It is a plug-and-play solution with CE approval. We offer RoHS compliance, and in addition to our own software, we offer libraries for the LabVIEW users, and we offer libraries for the programmers as well. So we try and support all three platforms: FUTEK software, LabVIEW users, and programmers. Over the last several years, we've grown our family of products within our USB product line. This slide represents some of the key aspects to our USB solution in terms of performance. First of all, you can see we have several devices that we offer as far as sample rate capability, up to 4,800. Accuracy-wise, all of them are down at 0.001%, So when you look at your error budget, essentially negligible performance relative to the overall system error budget. Tremendous resolution, offering 16 to 19 bits of maximum resolution. Another key aspect to USB solutions, our testing has shown that we reduce the amount of noise introduced into the system by coming right in with our millivolt signal and going through our A to D versus using an amplified solution and going into an A to D, as would be typical for a PLC environment. I'd also like to point out that when you look at our resolution, we're very specific in indicating noise-free bits. This is based on significant testing done by FUTEK, and we believe this is important because we feel that in many cases this type of information is misrepresented by just presenting bit resolution without taking into consideration noise level influence. Regarding new product information that I'd like to share with everybody, I think instead of discussing it or presenting it, I'm going to show you a 3-minute video. I'd like you to watch the video and then we'll come back to you for additional information.
Hi, I'm John with the FUTEK Technical Support Team, and in this video I will be introducing the USB 520 and USB 530 and going over their specifications. The USB 520 and 530 are one of our latest offerings in our very popular USB solutions family. Our goal was to create a single USB solution that can work with a large range of sensor output types. As a result, we engineered a high precision instrument that can work with millivolt per volt output sensors as well as with amplified voltage and current output sensors. As with all of our USB devices, the USB 520 and 530 are powered through a computer's USB connection. This means there is no need for an external power supply for the USB device. It also means there is no need for a power supply for the sensor, no matter if the sensor is a standard millivolt per volt output or an amplified output type. To achieve its compatibility with amplified sensors, the USB 520 and 530 can supply up to 24 volts to the sensor and supply a simultaneous 5 volts to power items like the encoders in our rotary torque sensors. The USB 520 has a sampling rate up to 4,800 samples per second, and the USB 530 offers up to 15,000 samples per second. Both the USB 520 and 530 offer multiple profiles for multiple calibrations. This can be used for different types of sensors or with the same sensor with each profile set to a different range. For example, one profile can be for 200 pounds and another for the same sensor at 25 pounds. Giving better performance for the lower range of the 200-pound sensor. Both USB devices have an internal resolution of up to 24 bits. The USB 520 and 530 can work with millivolt per volt output sensors up to plus or minus 400 millivolts per volt, as well as amplified voltage output sensors up to plus or minus 10 volts DC and current amplified output sensors from 0 to 20 milliamps. Additionally, both USB devices have the ability to work with encoders, such as those in our TRS 605 rotary torque sensors that can be used to measure RPM and angle. Both offer quadrature readings up to 150,000 pulses per second for speed and up to 10,000 pulses per rotation for angle measurements. To use the USB 520 or USB 530, simply plug it into an available USB port and start the SenseIt software. The SenseIt software also offers linearization, which can further improve the performance of your system by linearizing your output based on the captured and stored calibration points. The USB 520 and USB 530 can also be used with other programs such as LabVIEW and Visual Studio through the use of our DLL file. Our DLL file is available on our FUTEK website under the SenseIt support page. In addition, the USB 520 and 530 have an automatic streaming ASCII output. For more information, please visit our FUTEK website at www.futek.com for an available USB 520 and USB 530 resolution demonstration and a USB 520/530 setup and calibration video.
Well, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the video. Now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Brandon King, who will give us additional information and some depth on the Sensit software.
Thanks, John, for that introduction, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. My name is Brandon King. I'm an electrical engineer. I work with FUTEK for the software development. So first, let's look at some of the software and developer considerations. First of all, I'd like to say that our USB products lend themselves as a viable option with multiple avenues to take for machine builders, especially when above and beyond is needed. So what we're going to look at today is the hardware setup, which will include the LSB200 and a USB kit as an example. So what are some of the limitations that we should be considering? First, we could look at speed, resolution, reliability, and support. So for speed, we have several USB devices that address higher speed applications, speeds up to 15,000 samples per second. Although there are several limiting factors when you consider the hardware and software components of an automation system, FUTEK's USB DLL has been optimized for users of closed-loop systems. Getting the latest reading from the device can be retrieved in 2 milliseconds or less. This provides ample time for a system to be closed several hundred times per second. For resolution, FUTEK has USB devices that support high resolution up to 19 bits noise-free. And reliability. The reliability of USB has improved with the latest operating systems. For example, Windows 8.1 has made improvements to their device enumeration, their USB driver stack, and USB diagnostic tools and debugger extensions. And finally, support. FUTEK provides support and tools including FUTEK's USB DLL, our USB drivers, several programming examples using LabVIEW or Visual Studio, and more. So now let's look at some of the specific configuration options. There are several platforms that can utilize FUTEK's USB solution. First would be Sensit Test and Measurement. That's an ideal solution for turnkey applications. Supports linearization of up to 16 calibration points. It provides tools such as live graphing and data logging. It also supports up to 16 USB devices. It's also a great tool even if you're developing your own software application, and it can be used for verification purposes. We can also have an ASCII output. So the FUTEK USB devices have a continuous streaming output feature. The ASCII output can be used by any software application that can read serial data from the COM ports. A few examples include DocLite, HyperTerminal, PuTTY, RealTerm, and MATLAB. This is an ideal solution for machine builders and integrators that just need an output from the device. Next, there's LabVIEW. FUTEK provides a USB DLL that's compatible with LabVIEW, and we also have several examples on our website. Also, you can use Visual Studio, which also supports the use of our FUTEK USB DLL. Now let's take a look at Sensit Test and Measurement. Sensit provides an easy-to-use application for sensor measurement and for data logging. Sensit supports all of our latest instruments. We have various instruments that support our entire sensor line. Our instruments can also be used with other sensor manufacturers' sensors, including strain gauge sensors, amplified voltage, amplified current, and encoder pulse outputs. Sensit also uses the same USB DLL that we provide for use with LabVIEW and Visual Studio. Next, we have a slide that shows an example of a live graph using Sensit. This live graph plots several different readings at the same time, including tracking, peak, and valley values. As you can see, we support multiple axes for the y-axis. We also have the option to export the data using several different file formats for Excel, including XLS, XLSX, CSV files, text files, supporting different formats for different users. Now let's take a look at the FUTEK USB DLL. The use of the USB DLL will require some software development experience. The commands used by this DLL have a send and receive type of communication. You have full access to the command set, including the ability to request information from the device, to completely configure the device, and even to calibrate the device. The USB DLL can be used for more advanced integration into your system as well. All of our USB devices also have an ASCII streaming output. The use of the ASCII streaming output is a one-way communication. The streaming output is set to match the sampling rate of the ADC that's on board the hardware. This is useful for applications when only an output is needed. It can be used on several platforms, including the Windows operating system, the Mac OS X operating system, and Linux. The last option that we're going to cover today is LabVIEW. FUTEK's USB DLL is compatible with LabVIEW. LabVIEW gives you the ability to use .NET assemblies through several .NET nodes. You can instantiate a .NET object, you can call a method on a .NET class or object, and you can access a property on a .NET class or object. LabVIEW provides all of these features through the functions palette using the connectivity and the .NET extensions. So to summarize, there are several considerations when selecting hardware and software for both automation and system integration. FUTEK's USB products provide solutions to these needs, and we're using them in our own software development process. At this time, I'd like to pass it back to John Schnell, and I'll be available during the Q&A session.
Hello again, this is John Schnell, and now we get to the essence of our program today. Tying this all together, as I promised you at the beginning, we'll go through some applications that will give you some great examples on how to apply our technology. I would like to say that the diagrams that we're presenting here are somewhat generic in nature. A lot of that has to do with protecting our customers' proprietary information and also allows us to talk at many different levels. But the first one that we're showing here involves basically medical bag weighing applications, which is very common in our industry, and the LSB200 is the load cell of choice, primarily because of nonlinearity, working range, and mechanical overload stops. In this particular case, I've got two potential considerations. One, the potential to blend pharmaceuticals, where I have a saline bag or a bag with some particular material, and I'm adding custom pharmaceuticals to that to custom manufacture a pharmaceutical for a patient for a specific need. Could be a cancer medication or something like that. In this case, you can see that I've got my sensor, I've got my USB device, and I'm going right back to my laptop computer, running my Sense It software, all very straightforward and simple application. Now, the other application for medical bag weighing involves the distribution of that medication, where I have got the medication and I'm providing the solution to the customer, to the patient, and I'm metering the dispensing of the drug. In this application, we are offering a complete turnkey solution utilizing our load cell, our USB device, our Sense It software, everything running off the laptop computer. The information is being monitored, the graphs are being generated, and the data is being logged to Excel. So in this application, we're able to provide the client a complete solution from one supplier, and again, a very high performance solution. This next slide is a good example of fixturing and load cell selection. In both cases, we're looking at the force required to operate or actuate the plunger of a syringe. Now, we've had a couple applications where it's been the syringe itself that's under test and or the dispensing of the material, which has to be done at a uniform rate. We've also had applications where the insertion force has been the key measurand involved here. But the key aspect of this slide is to show you that in one case we have the LSB200 that we're utilizing for this test, and in the other case we've fixtured up an LLB series load cell. And a lot of this gets into customer preference and fixturing. So whether I use the LSB 200 or whether I use an LLB series, it just simply shows you we have flexibility in our form factor to accommodate the client. In both cases, we're capturing the data with our USB solution. We could also offer other instrumentation packages to do this, taking this into a laptop computer and utilizing the Sensit software for data collection and data presentation. Now, one side application I'd like to tie into this is the use of a non-magnetic load cell in this exact application for soft tissue imaging, specifically in MRI environments. The fluid needs to be dispensed at a very specific rate in order for the imaging process to occur correctly. But also the load cell, the cable, the fixturing is all located in the magnetic field, and the concern there is distortion of the imaging process. So in that case, in that application, the load cell that we provided was non-magnetic, the cable assembly was non-magnetic. This allowed for high quality imaging in a soft tissue application. In our next application, we're looking at feedback solutions for prosthetic limbs. In this case, we have an arm, and with all these type of devices, we've got to have a force feedback in the system for proper control and proper mobility. So in this case, we have a user who is actually using the LSB 200, and you can see there are multiple points in the system, and that allows for proper operation of, in this case, not only the fingers themselves, but also the positioning of the structure. And also, as in the other applications, we're taking this back through our USB devices into a laptop where we're logging all the data points and allowing the user to capture that data in an Excel spreadsheet for proper analysis in product development. All that being said, we do offer other instrumentation solutions, be it a simple analog amplifier such as our CSG 110, or more sophisticated devices. We have a digital programmable analog amplifier that allows direct interface to the customer's control. So for those applications where the customer has his control and we simply want to provide him with the correct signal, we can give that customer low-level analog, high-level analog, USB to support him properly. This application encompasses not only prosthetic devices, but also robotics, in this case the robotic arm, and you can get more information on the work that they're doing by visiting roboticstudio.com. The next application is a derivative of the last application. In this case, we're still at a concept stage where we're looking at button-style load cells, as you can see, located in the fingertips of a robotic arm. And again, it's force feedback, so the whole idea is how much force do I need to pick up an object. If I'm picking up a golf ball as shown in the image, I would apply a certain amount of force. If that object happened to be an egg, and obviously if I don't make adjustments, I end up with a cooking disaster. And once again, you're seeing that we're taking this back through our USB devices, ultimately onto the laptop. And I will reinforce the previous position where if customer has his own controls, we can adapt, providing you with analog signals, digital signals to accommodate customer control if our USB and Sensit software are not utilized. Our next application is probably one of the most precise applications that we've been involved with recently. This device is a stapling device that relies on motors into the handle to provide the actual actuation. There's a very precise torque value associated with this setup, and the end result is a clamping force that you see at the end of the tool. And our customer utilizes our smallest button style load cell, our LLB 130, to measure this force which is directly correlated to the torque generated by the motors that are actually doing the work. In this case, precision is extremely critical, and as we talked about early on, all of the associated pedigrees with medical instrument devices are required, the ISO standards, the cabling standards. So this load cell is a very critical auditing device used on their production floor to check each and every device before it leaves their factory. Our last application takes us back to the medical world, where we're going to address the control of a catheter specifically used in electrophysiology, peripheral vascular, and cardiovascular applications. In these applications, it's very important to be able to control the catheter as the surgeon inserts the catheter into the patient. This process of controlling the direction and motion of the catheter is done by tension controls of control wires, and the force measuring those wires is done with our LSB 200. In this application, like the others, performance, response, resistance to overload, and noise immunity are extremely important. So once again, we have an application where we're going from the load cell, which is measuring the tension that drives the catheter or directs the catheter, through our USB, and in this case we're going right into the customer's proprietary control, where they're taking the USB information and performing their own programming or software environment. So in closing on applications, I think this is the perfect closing point. This application is extremely critical, requires precise results to guide that catheter on its journey to repair the body, and requires a digitized data to allow for proper feedback and control. In closing, I'd like to leave you with these takeaways. We do offer an integration solution with minimal components. Once again, load cell, USB, and software from a single source. So we do minimize the number of suppliers in the system integration. Because we focus on the more demanding applications, we're offering high resolution, great accuracy, and very high speed. And then for simplicity's sake, if you look at the last image, it gives you a great representation of how convenient the solution is, where we show the load cell, the USB device plugged into a laptop, and of course our software would be residing on the laptop. So I want to thank you all for your attention today. Hopefully we presented you with some very beneficial information, and it's been a good learning experience. If you do have any questions, we will now move into our question and answer segment. Likewise, you have our contact data should you have any additional requirements or questions at the end of the session. Please contact us. Thank you. The first question: what type of support is provided by FUTEK for programmers and LabVIEW users? On our website, we have libraries and examples for Visual Basic, Visual C, and LabVIEW. It should be noted, as with most aspects of our website, this information is continuously updated. Our next question involves sensor compatibility with the USB product line. What other sensors will the USB products support? Our USB products will support any sensor that is a full bridge strain gauge device. We also support sensors that have a plus and minus 10 VDC output or 4 to 20 milliamps. There are also USB solutions that provide signal processing for not only the analog output of our rotary torque sensors, but also for the pulsed encoder output.
Looks like this question is for me. How fast can you go from requesting data to receiving data? Well, the length of time depends on the communication between the hardware and the software, and it can also be affected by the number of processor cores, the amount of RAM, or the number of applications running at the same time. It also depends on the command that's being sent. So for example, we have a command to request the latest reading from the device. The firmware is scheduled to respond within 2 milliseconds. That means that you can send and receive the command up to 500 times per second. But what about another example? What if you're requesting data and need 15,000 samples per second? Then there's a different command that can be used to request all of the data in the hardware's buffer, which can store up to 60 readings at a time. This means that you'd need to send a request at least 250 times per second, or about 4 milliseconds, to capture all of the data.
This next question is excellent. Can the FUTEK USB products be interchangeable with multiple sensors? There are two directions that you can take if we perform a system calibration on the system consisting of the sensor and the USB device. The traceable calibration is performed and the USB device is factory set. They become a match set. If, however, we leave the USB device in the default mode, the output information from the USB device is in millivolts per volt, much like a voltmeter, in which case the scaling can be done within the Sensit software or within your own environment. Our next question addresses the sample rate. Is the sample rate adjustable? Yes. Within the Sensit environment, there are a number of adjustable parameters via pull-down menus, where the user then, in this case, can adjust his sampling rate to whatever setting they desire, up to the specified maximum sample rate for the given device.
Looks like this would be another question for software. What's the response rate for sensors? I'm assuming that what you're referring to is the frequency response of sensors. The frequency response of a sensor will vary from design to design or model to model. To give you an idea, most of our products have a frequency response in several hundred to several thousand hertz. We may have a few designs that exceed 10,000 hertz, but it's not typical. We do have a variety of USB devices that support different sampling rates, from as low as 2.5 samples per second to as high as 15,000 samples per second. Here's a good question. When I think USB, I don't tend to think robust measuring devices. How is this advantageous for machine builders? So if you're referring to the physical robustness of a USB connector, or even the Hiroshi connectors we use on some of our USB devices, then we have other options available, including binder connectors and cables. We also have an upcoming product, the USB 520, that comes in an aluminum closure with binder connectors for the sensor and a standard USB cable for the communication.
Next question. Are there any IOs provided by the USB and Sensit software solution? No, the Sensit software solution is intended for information display and data logging in Excel. Possible IO solutions could be achieved, for example, through use of LabVIEW. Our next question addresses the Excel file. What information is saved to the Excel file? We will automatically save the track value, the peak value, and the valley value. However, this is user selectable. So for example, if all you are interested in would be the tracking information, you can select just that and send that over. It should also be noted that each data point is date and time stamped for proper evaluation after the test. This brings us to the close of our webinar. First, I want to thank the audience for taking time from your busy schedules to sit in on our webinar. Hopefully, we provided you with some very useful information. And I also want to thank my colleague, Brandon King, for supporting us and taking time to help with our presentation. Once again, if you have any questions or need any additional follow-up support, please let us know. Thank you and have a great day.
Thanks, John, and thanks to all of our audience members for being part of this webinar event. Now, as a sign of our appreciation, one lucky attendee who completes our survey will receive an iPad mini. So please take a moment to complete our survey, which will appear on your screen at the end of this webinar. We'd like to inform you that you will be receiving an email from us with a link to the on-demand version of this presentation, where you may also access a PDF of this PowerPoint. Again, thank you for taking the time to learn more about automation using miniature load cells and USB solutions. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.